All right, welcome back. Mastering Modern Selling, episode number 104. Carson, good to have you back. We
Good
missed
to be
you.
back. Missed you guys.
Brandon, good to see you.
Oh,
And
my hair on fire.
and we have yet another amazing guest this week, Doug Stewart, who is sitting in a rest area. Is that where you are at the
I'm actually at a middle school.
Oh, okay. All right.
Going to teach some people how to sell, I
That's
hope. We
right.
got to
Yeah,
start them
that's-
early.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You can never start too early.
It's true.
So welcome. Great to have. Where are you? What part of the country, Doug?
Right now, well, I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm
Okay.
actually on my way back from an event with a client in Virginia Beach. So it's about a 3 hour or so drive. I'm kind of like halfway between right now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, it looked like there were a lot of trees and stuff in the area. So
Yeah,
definitely didn't look
yeah.
like California, that's for sure.
No, it's definitely not California.
When I was in Cairo 2 weeks ago, that looked a lot like California.
Yeah, that's true.
Ah,
That's true.
Dry desert. Yeah,
mhm.
Yeah, back from Arizona. There's not much vegetation there. So
exactly.
There's even less
Exactly.
there than here.
Yeah. Hey, I'm excited to get to this and here Doug was just leading an event, which I want to hear about as well. But this is exciting to me because this is all about Carnegie and how to win friends and influence people. Like this is my energy right here.
All right, well, let's rock and roll. Doug, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and then I'm sure we have a few questions that we might want to get. And I want to welcome our most valuable guest, or I'm sorry, most valuable listener, Bob, is here. So aloha to Bob as well.
Aloha, which is different than a high shout.
That's right. All right, Doug, tell us.
Thanks, Carson.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm Doug Stewart. I'm a native of North Carolina. I've been in this training development space since about 2011 or so. Before that, my background was retail. My grandfather owned a number of furniture stores across the Raleigh, North Carolina area, and he decided to put me on his sales floor when I was about 12 years old. And I thought when that happened, I saw it as a big honor, right? My grandfather sees something in me. He's willing to take this risk and put me in front of these adults, right, as a 12-year-old. And then I realized a little bit later on, this was about my college age, I asked him about it because it was something that was so influential and meaningful to me. And, I'm like, Grandpa, this was such a big deal for you to trust me like this. And he goes, oh, I actually wasn't sure that you'd have any other transferable skills. And so what I know, and this is, I mean, he lived and breathed this. If you can sell, you can survive, right? And so he taught me that skill. So that's really my first competency was sales. And then I was invited to attend a Dale Carnegie program with a customer of mine, because she had shared with me that her leader was going to make her take this stupid leadership program and she didn't want to go. But if I would go with her, they would pay my way as well. And so I attended this thing, had a transformational, life-changing experience, really in every category of my life. And then just stuck. The person at the time that was running that market really turned into like a father figure, and his wife a mom to me. And that was back in 2011. And today my role is as the vice president of business development. And I manage most of our global sales strategy, as well as a team that manages our regional and local business. And then I also facilitate, coach, and do some other things across the network as well.
Hey, Doug, I was fully expecting your grandfather to say he wanted free labor and he just wanted to get you out of his hair and send you off in the
There was probably a little bit of that,
something.
Brandon. Probably a little bit of that.
So, Doug, when you went to the original workshop, which was 2011, right? What
That's
was,
right.
and I know there was probably a number of things, but what was the maybe one or two things that were those butt kicking, life changing realizations that you had? And and then what happened after that?
You know, I've always been skeptical of the types of sayings like, if you build it, they will come. When the learner is ready, the teacher will appear. Like those sorts of things have always felt like a little like airy fairy. But in this case, I think it really plays out, because when I attended that first program, it was at a time in my life when I really desperately needed community. My wife and I had just left the family business, and unfortunately, this was after my grandfather passed. And unfortunately, the uh, the the thing that we were told by other members of our family was, if you leave the family, or if you leave the business, then you leave the family. It's your choice. Right. And we knew that we
Wow.
weren't meant to be there. And it feels very like mob sort of thing, you know?
You were a
Um,
made man. Yeah.
yeah, that's right. And we knew that that wasn't what we wanted to do for the rest of our lives. And so we rolled the dice. And so my wife, I left the family business and took an entry level job at a company called Tempur-Pedic. And we had just made that transition, and essentially had been kind of excommunicated from my family. Her family doesn't live close by, and we really needed community. And what I found in that program, in addition to the methods, the models, the structures, and all the things that make Dale Carnegie training famous, was the people, it was the community, which was such an incredible gift to us, especially then, and obviously still to this day.
Wow. That's an amazing story.
I love it. And it reminds me also, and Doug and I have spoke about this, that as much as I love the book, I've consumed the book. I read this book over and over. I've never been to a Dale Carnegie event, which is probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made, especially listening to Doug's story. But I will be with Doug in 2 weeks at a Dale
That's
Carnegie
right.
event up in Raleigh.
We look
Oh,
forward
yeah,
to
that's
your
right.
report.
That's right.
Transformational, I tell you already. Haven't
I
even been
can't
there
tell you
yet.
how many times I've recommended that book to people, especially people that I've coached, and how important it is to truly earn the right to influence. Just the way that it still, we talk all the time, Brandon. You've got your statement about how the more things change, the more they stay the same. That is one fundamental truth of sales that will never go away.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Doug, tell us a little bit, as VP of Business Development, kind of give us and the audience the pitch, right? Like why do mentorship? Why do the coaching? Why get involved with this? How is that going to help you? Let's kind of go through the process.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that anytime we have a message to deliver, or a product or service to communicate, or an opportunity to share, it's all sales, right? And as we know, as Zig Ziglar famously said, that you know all sales is simply a transference of emotion, right? And so the thing that really, I think, stands out for us is, it's not very common for us as adults to have a space where we can go on a once on a weekly basis, or maybe ever, where we can sit with a group who is genuinely interested in our intended outcomes, and we can just spend time thinking about, considering, committing, planning, having insights, sharing ideas, challenging ideas. It's so rare for us as adults to have that, right? Like if we think about just the four of us, and if we were to answer the question of, when was the last time you had an hour that was just you, and your job was just to focus on you and who you were becoming and where you were going. My anecdotal experience says that not many people actually have that opportunity ever, right? And so one of the beautiful things about Dale Carnegie training, and the thing that has made it last for over 100 years, and to be able to be delivered in 90 countries in 34 different languages, is the fact that it's not tactics, it's not techniques, it's not tricks. It is based solely in human nature. And the biggest distinction is that the things that we commit to and the Dale Carnegie principles that we commit to be a demonstration of aren't things that we use on other people for our benefit. These are things that we use on ourselves for the benefit of others. And the byproduct is we also get to benefit, right? And so being able to make that distinction between what is simply knowledge transfer and what is true, applicable, tactical, tangible skill development is really the differentiator for us.
I love the similarities to a lot of the themes that we've talked about on this show before, whether it's the building community and the importance of that piece, all the way to just some of the fundamental elements of the relationships that are created, the transfer of emotion, the earning the right to influence. I love how the fundamentals are so grounded in what Doug just said.
Yeah, and what I hear you saying is it's not about what you do, but what you are. Is you're really expanding who you are versus what you're doing. And if you do that, then what you're doing should be more efficient, more effective, and more successful.
Yeah, and in fact, it's one of the things we just talked about in the workshop that we just delivered for one of our clients is this idea of what does it mean to be authentic, right? So conventional wisdom says that authenticity means that I'm true to myself, right? Whatever that means, and that's assuming I even know who I am, right? I'm still figuring it out, and I'm living into this thing. But if we use the definition of authenticity of being true to ourselves or being who we really are or being fully transparent all the time and kind of using it in that context, then we run the risk of behaving poorly because we're emotionally elevated, we're frustrated, we're overwhelmed, we're hungry, we're tired, whatever that is. And if I operated as someone who was just being authentic to who I really am, the person I feel like being on those days when I'm tired, hungry, overwhelmed, frustrated is not a good person.
So
not a good person at all.
I got to make a throwback here. Isn't that a famous line from, I know we used to do movie references, famous line from Batman. It's not about who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
Oh, well done.
Couldn't resist.
Yeah, that's solid. That's solid. And yeah, I mean, we made this distinction in this workshop today that we can think about authenticity that way, or we can think about authenticity in terms of being aligned, being aware of, and a demonstration of the attributes and characteristics we've committed to. Right. So the example I gave is like tonight, like I am a completely like a closet introvert. I'm an introvert. I like to say I'm an introvert that has worked really hard on their social skills, and people wear me out. Like wear me out. I get no energy from being with and around people. And so tonight when I get home, I'm going to be exhausted. Right? I've still got a few hours ahead of me.
We're kindred spirits, my friend.
Oh my gosh. But here's the thing though. I've got two kids, a 13-year-old daughter and a 6-year-old son. And when my garage door opens when I get home, they're going to be waiting for me. And as I love these kids, they are two of the four most important people in my life. Only with my wife, my two kids, and my grandmother. And that is half of the most important people in my world. They're going to want my time, energy, effort, attention tonight. And I love them. I'm not going to want to. I'm going to be tired. Right. But authenticity is saying, am I going to operate based on how I feel and go, look, kids, I'm tired. I need some time. Like, leave me alone. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Or am I going to align and be a demonstration of the characteristics that I've decided to be, which is the type of father that gives time, energy, and effort to his kids, regardless of how I feel. Authenticity has so much more to do with us doing the hard thing, especially in the times that we don't feel like it or it's inconvenient, right? And so that's the demonstration part that really is a distinction between, do I know it, do I believe it, or do I embody it?
You know what I like about that too is the topics that we've talked about on the show. We've talked about sales skills, strategies, techniques. We've talked a lot about consistency. I'd say over the last couple of months, guys, we've been talking a lot about, and maybe we haven't used the word, or probably we have used the word authenticity, but we've talked more about knowing yourself, like figuring out your own, as Christy said, know your shit, figure out who you are and all that. And I think this authenticity, at least the way that you're defining it and you're speaking about it, is really plays into that. Like, prospecting is hard, but you've got to do it, and you've got to create systems for consistency, because if you're not prospecting, your pipeline's going to be empty. And if your pipeline's empty, you're not going to hit your goals. Then you go all the way back and start over. And if you don't continually prospect, your pipeline goes like this, and your revenue go like, all this stuff comes into play. Really, to what you just said, is so often, I think, especially in our US culture, we act the way we feel and then justify it like, well, I was tired, or I was hungry, or I just didn't feel like it, so I didn't do it. And that discipline of getting to, I think what I hear you saying, like taking the time to clearly define who you want to be, and then acting accordingly and keeping yourself accountable, and having mentors and community that, in a loving, kind, every now and then smack you alongside the head way, are keeping you accountable to it. I mean, that's kind of what I heard in this, in a bigger picture of what we've done on the show before, and what Doug's saying here. Does that sound cohesive to you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, I think a lot of times as salespeople or as sales leaders, we show up with a person, a customer, a group, a team, and we purport to be something, right? The proof's in the pudding. We've got to deliver that. It's great if I show up and I tell a customer that I'm in it for them and I want them to win, but your actions are going to ultimately dictate whether that's true or not. And I think it's all the more important that, especially when we're working with a customer, I like to put some of my cards on the table. If I'm going to earn their trust, and if I'm going to earn the right to influence them, I'm going to have to show them some of my cards, and that, look, these are the things that matter. I need to understand your things that matter. I need to understand, what do you want your legacy to be? I asked a customer that a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, you're new to this role. What brought you here? What do you want your legacy to be? These are the things that matter to my team, my organization. Are there synergies? Are there ways that we can work together? And let's be honest about what's possible and what's not, because neither one of us have the time to go down a path that is going to waste cycles for either one of us. So I think that's really important, is to be able to, we're going to show up and we're going to purport to be something, but you've got to make sure that you keep showing up that way and live your values. Doug, what you said too about, like, the second I walk out that door here in a couple hours, I'm immediately husband, dad, and I can't let my exhaustion show. And sometimes I do, but I want to be there with and for my kids, and someday I'll get some rest.
Just tell them that you were on this show and it was just draining, and these people were difficult. I mean, that's all you got to say.
They think this is like a break for me. So I'm that's why. But no, that resonated with me a great deal, because we've got to live the values that we purport to be.
And I think as we talk about mentorship, and I'm sorry, Tom, I know we have an agenda, but it made me curious. Like, I think there's, and Bob said people conflate coaching with mentoring. I find that there's a lot of terms that get used of coaching, mentoring. Our company's like a family, we're a community. But I find that true mentorship and true community is really difficult to find. Like, you ask some leaders and they're like, oh yeah, we do mentoring, we do this. And you ask their people and they're like, oh, what the hell they're talking about. Like, that's one of the challenges that I see. And what I like about what you do is you really bring that to life for people.
And what would be, Doug, what would you consider as the difference between coaching and mentoring, if someone were to ask?
I think the biggest thing for me, and I have a little bit of an alternative perspective on what mentorship as a general idea means. But I think a lot of times the big distinction for me would be, when you're engaging in coaching, there's a stated and agreed upon intended outcome. this is a specific thing. I want to go from where I am to where I want to be. I want to create momentum on that path, and I need support to be able to get there. Whereas mentorship, in my opinion, doesn't require many of the things that we think or have traditionally conventional wisdom has said mentorship requires, right? Like, I think what we've conflated more than the coach and mentor thing is really the mentor and apprentice thing, right? Where you, if I wanted to become, let's say, an electrician, I would apprentice with an experienced electrician, and they would teach me the way that they do things, and they would help me develop in that way. When it comes to mentorship, it's not required for someone else to give us permission or to give us their time or energy. We can engage in mentorship with everything and everyone around us, and that's really, I guess, kind of the crux of what my book, as well as my TEDx talk, that's both really about the same topic, was really about, really giving people a sense of freedom that they don't need to be picked, that all they have to do is engage in this process of allowing, like Seneca said, every person I meet is in some way my superior, and in that I learn from them, right? Seeing everything. And really the big difference is, are we willing to have the discipline, speaking of discipline, to approach everything in our life with curiosity instead of judgment? Because those two things can't coexist. They can't be in the same place at the same time. I know for me, when I'm judgmental, I'm never curious. And when I'm curious, I'm never judgmental, right? And so that curiosity is the thing that drives, along with the awareness to then apply, test, try, and then provide feedback where you're getting these inputs from.
I'd love to hear from our audience too, like, experiences that they've had in the way of mentorship and coaching. I had a great mentor years ago that really instilled in me that you're going to have people that because mentors can coach you, but you're going to have these distinct figures in your career. You're going to have managers; they're going to serve a role. You're going to have mentors, and you're going to have sponsors. And all of them are going to have different functions in your life and in your career. I may have a mentor in the moment. I may be up against something where I feel like I'm in a no-win scenario, or I don't know where to go with this situation, and I'm going to phone a friend. I know somebody who's been in this situation before. I'm going to call them, and they might be a mentor of the moment who gives me coaching. But the other thing is, you're going to have other people that are like on your career advisory board that are going to be mentoring you all the time about different situations. Then you've got your sponsors who, when this role comes up or this opportunity or this project comes up, they're willing to stand up for you and say, yes, that's the person. You need to talk to this person because X, Y, Z. That's not necessarily a person that's coaching you. It's not necessarily a person that's mentoring you. And a manager, ideally, they will coach you, but they're not always your mentor either. A lot of times, my mentor might be somebody else. But I have had great managers that are also mentors. And I think that's why it's so critical. When I was pompous and arrogant in my 20s, I always prided myself in, I've never had a mentor. I've never had any of that. And what I look back and I realize, it's like, first off, I wish I could go back and kick that guy. But I also, I think about going out and proactively finding everybody that I felt was better than me at anything and just learning from them. That has been the most impactful element of my entire sales career. I can go out, I can listen to Doug deliver something, Brandon deliver something, Tom deliver something. I can assimilate that into my arsenal after hearing it delivered once or twice, and then I can go forward better. That's what I think is so important about mentorship.
What changed my perception, because like Carson, probably a whole lot worse. I was arrogant. I was Carl joined us. It must have been like the bat signal that we said the word curiosity, and Carl jumped over. He came over to chat with us as a curiosity coach. But I think, when I was younger, arrogant, I was an entrepreneur. I had like one job after grad school and then jumped into entrepreneurship and felt like the weight of the world on my shoulders. And it was really, really difficult for me to ask for help for a long time. But I had a coach tell me one time, because I was doing things like I'd read a book and be like, I've got to take everything from this book and apply it. And then I'd read the next book and go, I got to take everything in this book and apply it. And it made me think of it, Carson, when you were talking, is that he said, Brandon, whether you listen to someone talk, you read a book, you listen to a book on tape, yes, cassettes, tapes back in the day. He said, just see what the one main nugget was that stood out to you, like a gold piece of nugget. It's really small. It fits in your pocket, but that little nugget is extremely valuable because it's solid gold. Don't try to take the whole gold mine on and feel like you need to go mine the entire thing. Just find that one little nugget, stick it in your pocket, know that it's valuable, and start to apply that. And that made a huge difference for this young, arrogant, broken, pain in the ass entrepreneur back in the day.
There's a couple things that I've gathered. One is that Carson and Brandon were arrogant in the day, and I was always so humble, but that's all right. But what I'm hearing you say, Doug, is first of all, this mentor thing requires a mindset approach. You have to have a mindset that you're willing to accept help. Carson and Brandon, what you were just saying. I think I'll just pop up Marie's comment here, right? She says, I call others all the time and lead others to others when I recognize I can't help, right? And I think we struggle sometime with doing that, with calling others or reaching out to others because we're going to be burdensome or we're going to, get in their way or interrupt them or whatever. And I'd love your take on this, Doug. As I started to think about it, most of the time when I've reached out and asked somebody for help, they're excited and they're willing and they feel better. It's actually to your point, Carson, it actually gives them energy along the way. Do you see that to be true? I mean, is that an accurate observation?
Without a shadow of a doubt. In fact, one of the things that we end up talking to, especially young adults, late adolescent, young adult, and even early career, is when the question is asked, how do I find a mentor that'll help me? The answer is always, what are you doing right now? Because mentors are always attracted to people who are already on the path, right? Mentors do not want to, the ones that we want, though, the ones that will actually be useful and helpful for us, will not pull us across our own finish line. They won't get us up off of our own sofa, right? They will join us, but they will not find us and pick us and beg us to go on the journey, right? And so once people have momentum and they're already doing their work, and I think the commitment, speaking to your comment, it's really a matter of ownership. As an example, when we talk about how to engage with a mentor to get the most out of that experience, one of the most, I guess, surprising pieces of suggestion that we give is to never ask for advice.
Mm-hmm.
And that commonly causes people to kind of step back and go, wait, what are you talking about? Isn't that the whole point of like a mentor-mentee relationship? And the challenge with advice is disembodied, right? And advice is oftentimes is in concrete in the place and time that it happened, right? So as an example, if my daughter, who's 13, in a couple of years asked me the best way for her to get a job in high school, I would go, well, it's easy. You get your resume together, you take it down to Kinko's, you get it printed, and you get a couple of them printed, and then you go around and you hand them out at local businesses. And the reality is that's not the way that it happens as often anymore, right? And so I could give really bad advice, even though it worked exceptionally well for me. Not to mention if my daughter has a different personality, a different style, some different predispositions, or she's a different generation, she's a different gender. So there's things that may have been effective for me that wouldn't be effective for her, and vice versa. So instead of asking for disembodied advice, the recommendation is ask for a story, because a story has nuance, it has layers. It's something that we can read it in light of our own experiences, and then we can figure out and tailor it, that story that we've been told, we can tailor it to something that'll work for us. And then we're able to go provide feedback after we've applied and go back to that person and say, hey, look, that question that I asked you in that story that you told me, here's what I did with it, here's what I learned, and that feedback is one of the primary currencies for mentors, right? Because if I know I'm helping and I know you're applying, I'm going to keep investing. But if I think we're just talking, I've got customers to talk to, I've got team members to talk to, but I will absolutely invest time in someone that I know is coming to me for insights and then going and doing something and then has enough for appreciation and respect to then share with me what they did, what they learned, and what they're doing next.
So let me see if I got this right. What you're saying, Doug, is if I go to a mentor and ask for something, don't ask for, hey, what do you think? Or what's your advice? But say, hey, I've got this situation. I'm getting ghosted by all of my prospects. Do you have a story or something you can share with me that related to this that you've experienced? Is that sort of the way that you should draw that out?
Yeah, it's like have you ever had an experience like that, and if so, what happened? Right, because what they don't know, I know me better than anyone else knows me, and I don't know me very well. Right, so to know that they can tailor the advice in a way that will fit who I am, where I am, my situation, the nuances, my personality is really a stretch. Here's the other thing that's really I think an important point to make is that when I ask someone else for their advice and they give me direct advice, you know what you should do? You should go do this. If I go do it and and it doesn't work, then I don't have to take responsibility because it wasn't my idea. I can blame that terrible advice that person gave me. I don't have to take responsibility. What's worse is if they give me direct advice and I go do it and it works, I don't get to take any credit because it wasn't mine. So I create this relationship that causes me or the mentee to be in some way subservient to the knowledge, wisdom, whatever of that person, and it stifles the growth and the agency of the mentee. Right? So the mentee taking ownership, saying, I'm going to craft my questions in a way that I can get better context, better content, more nuance in the conversation with my mentor. And then as my mentor's talking, I'm tailoring it based on what I know about me, my situation, my intended outcomes, my vision, my values, my character, my past experience and future hopes. And as I'm doing that, then the ability to apply becomes much more specific, and I am taking full ownership because that's the percentage, and this is one of the, I guess, an important part as well, is the percentage of responsibility that other people have toward our development is absolutely zero. Right? They have no responsibility to it. That is solely ours. So if it's ours, let's take responsibility.
Yeah, and I think being a mentor, it's important to realize the responsibility of what you are imparting. But I'm a visual person. So when I think about this, I loved how Brandon, and I know we want to hit a couple of comments here in a second too and get Doug's thoughts. When I think about earlier, Brandon said something that really resonated, where it's, you're thinking about all these different areas where you're bringing in information that makes you better. Could be a podcast you listen to, could be a book you read. A mentor is another great, hopefully often reputable source where you're pulling information from. And it makes it all the more important of how we go about going out and finding mentors. I think some of the mistakes that people make is, like Doug said, you don't just go to somebody and randomly just ask them for advice. And a lot of times it's out of context. And if they turn around and they give you advice immediately back, that's like going to a doctor and having them, without even doing any tests, diagnosing you immediately. Like, you need to build that rapport and have that additional context. When I go out and I seek out a mentor, I'm very intentional about my outcome that I'm trying to drive and my goal that I have. And I'm going to ask for and look for a mentor in that situation. Is this somebody who is a peer or colleague who's doing better than I am at something, so that I can go out and figure out what they're doing, assimilate it into my arsenal, do better? Is this somebody who I might one day want them to be my boss? And so I want to go out there, I want to meet them, understand, I'm going to ask them for feedback. and for guidance on how I might ultimately someday parlay my experience, my passion, my superpowers into what they do. But I also want to add value for them. Is there a unique perspective that I can give you that will help you with your existing business, your projects, whatever it is? Like, I don't want to just show up and ask for your feedback. Your time is very valuable. Are there some things, is there a way we can form, a partnership here where there's value that I can bring? And I'd love to get your feedback and guidance as you get to know me better, things of that stature. But I think that's why it's so important that we are intentional in our pursuit, but also that we're looking at mentors as yet another way of bringing in things that can make us better. We can internalize it, but we ultimately, Doug, we want to own that responsibility, because I'm responsible for going out and finding these things, internalizing them, and then executing.
That's so good, Carson. And I mean, what I was hearing you say too is, if we're out looking for someone to mentor us, the onus has got to be on us to show up the right way. And I think what I heard you and Doug both saying is that a lot of times people come in and they just say, tell me what to do. That's not looking for a mentor. That's looking for a solution. And you're looking for somebody. And as Doug said, if you do that and you apply it and it doesn't work, then you have no ownership. Like, I did what you said, it didn't work. And it puts you just in a negative cycle. Like, it sounds like the mentee side is a mindset, right? As well as the mentor side has to be a unique mindset. Either side can't be tell me what to do or let me tell you what to do. We got a couple of comments. I loved Carl's on mentors think easier to tame a zealot than raise the dead. I think that's a really good question and pump me or a comment. And then going into Marie's next one, and I think this is a good question. And Marie, I don't know if it really is totally relevant about just being a woman leader. I think in general, others seeking advice and you making time for them. Like, what do you guys do? Because we can't give our time to everybody. And I think there's this perception that if people ask me for my advice or they ask me for time, I want to be a giver. I want to be a servant. So I give it. But I don't think we always have to say yes. Like, how do you guys address that?
Was that to Doug, Brandon?
Doug, go for it.
Doug and Carson. Yeah, you. Maybe Doug's not hearing us anymore.
I'll go for it. I was leaving a little space to hear you guys. I think that for me the answer for when we think about how do we engage in these types of relationships, and as a mentor, how do we pick, right? Especially the mentors that we want most are usually the ones that have the most limited time, right? And I can thinking about my career now and the responsibilities I have as a husband, as a father, as a member of my community, my family, my team, my organization, and then my own ambitions. It doesn't leave a lot of time, and I'm not sure there's a great answer. But what I do know is if I am going to stretch my time, it's going to be for someone who's already doing the work, right? It's going to be someone that is pursuing me, not the other way around. And as I think about me as a mentee, the most successful mentee-mentor relationships I've had with my mentors are always the ones that I'm in pursuit of them. I'm not waiting for them to pursue me. And they have the full opportunity and right to go, like, buzz off, man, like, leave me alone. And that's their prerogative. Fortunately, it's not really something that's happened very often. And I think the way that we decide is based on what we think our return on investment, our time investment with that person will potentially give. Will this person actually apply? Would they do the work either way? Because a mentor realistically should not necessarily change the course of a person's trajectory. They should amplify it, or they should speed it up, right? Because I even think about the mentors I've had in my life. So many of them, as I think back, they sped up my development, but the reality was I was committed to getting there either way. Like if it wasn't through this relationship, I was gonna find a book. If it wasn't a book, it was gonna be a podcast. If it was a podcast, it was a YouTube video. If it was a YouTube video, it was anecdotal experience. If it wasn't that, it was my peer group. Like I was gonna find it and figure it out. And I think that ownership piece and being in pursuit of your own with enthusiastic discovery, let's say, really is the difference maker. And if we are someone that wants to attract mentors, that is the way to attract the best mentors.
It's funny. Sometimes I feel like people that are searching for mentors almost follow the same playbook because they say a lot of the same things. And I'm one of those people. I try to say yes to every opportunity, but it becomes just overwhelming. And so I do have some advice in that regard. I think first off, like, be honest. I mean, they're people, and to let them know, like, hey, look, I'm right now, I'm in the middle of this time of year in my fiscal business. I don't have a lot of time to show up, but I might around XYZ timeframe. On the flip side, when you're asking for a mentor, a lot of people will say like, hey, will you mentor me? Can we set up a cadence or something like that? That it's hard for me to commit to a cadence. So a lot of times I'll even say like, hey, rather than committing to some kind of cadence, I'd rather be available to you if you have future needs. Don't hesitate to reach out. And as time permits, let's try to get back together. It's impossible for me to commit to meeting with somebody every month, especially somebody that's not in my family or on my team. I just can't physically do it. But it's not. There's no malice intended. I'd love to meet with everybody I could if there was only an 8th day a week. So be honest about your limitations. Furthermore, being able to maybe redirect them to other resources. Doug, you kind of hit on this too. Like personally, if I can't get the person to mentor me, I'm going to go find some resources here or there. I'm going to find that podcast. I'm going to find that book. It's also helpful to direct people in the same way. I've had very impactful conversations where people have mentored me, where they've given me book recommendations. I don't need to talk to you 10 times a year. You give me a couple of book recommendations once a quarter. I've got homework, man. I can go out and I've read so many books this year that have been recommended to me by other people, like First Break All the Rules and The Score Takes Care of Itself. And I mean, the list goes on. And these are making me better. And I attribute it to that mentor that they didn't have to have like a weekly conversation with me. That's what made me better. And then the last thing I would say is like really making sure that you're, setting boundaries for, when and where this is going to be able to happen. I think that's the key element. When I'm going out looking for a mentor, I've got to be realistic in that some of these big prize mentors that I may be seeking, they may be in high demand, to Doug's point. And so being able to understand the boundaries that they may set on me and to be realistic when I'm asking for something. But on the flip side, as a person who mentors a lot of folks, to be able to say like, hey, it may be a quick LinkedIn message that we're able to exchange. There's a lot of people that I've mentored over the years that I don't talk to as frequently anymore, but that relationship is always there. And so I think just being realistic with the parameters of the relationship is super crucial.
Yeah, I think as I've gotten older and maybe wiser, definitely busier as my kids have gotten older too. If I get asked about my time in any way, whether it's more of a mentor or could I get 30 minutes or something, I actually ask several questions up front. And I want to make sure that they've got a focus, that if I'm going to give them 30 minutes, I want to believe that they've thought through it. Because if they're just willy-nilly asking for my time, they're not going to show up prepared. It's just going to be a chat, and it's 30 minutes that I can't get back.
Yep.
So I mean, maybe I'm being a jerk. Maybe people don't like it, but as I've gotten older and busier, and same thing, right? I've got a team of 12 people now. I have a wife. I have 5 kids. I have my men's group that I spend time with when they need me and when I need them. Like I get pulled in lots of directions, and I like to say, like, what do you have in mind?
Yep.
And I do it in general. I do it kind of open-ended like that because I want to hear if they've thought through this. Do they know what they want? Are they focused? Because if they're not focused, I'm sorry, but I'll respond with, why don't you, if they go, well, I just like to pick your brain. Great. I appreciate that. However, when you've got to focus and you really know what you want to accomplish, I'll be glad to make time for you, but I don't have time for my brain to be picked. And
Yeah.
and again, I don't want to sound like a jerk. I just, to what I think Doug you said earlier, or we've all kind of, you guys have all kind of said, it's like I love helping people who have something specific to accomplish, and I love to be a part of it. But if it's just here, and then I've taken that advice, like, and I've been spending more time talking with Mark Hunter, and I realized in one of my conversations with him, I was asking, like, he's been offering, and I asked for something. I went, oh God, if I was on the other side of that, I would be so unimpressed. And I was like, hold on, let me take that back. Let me gather my thoughts with what I really think I need and put a little bit more thought to it. And I'll come back to you on that, because I realized what a lame mentee I sounded like by just being like, hey, can I pick your brain? Or, hey, could you talk to me about this? So that would be my advice, whether you're on the mentee side or you're on a mentor side, is your time's valuable. Make sure they put some thought into it, and there's a focus, there's a purpose.
But Mark's the nicest guy in the world, so he probably didn't mind.
Yeah.
You know what I love, Brandon? Like, my thought process is going toward, like, what's the right, like, checklist to be able to, or kind of questionnaire to almost go back with folks. And I would agree with you. It's almost like, what's the desired outcome? Like, you can ask me to pick my brain, you can ask for a mentor relationship. What's the desired outcome? Marie made a comment in the chat about, I make time by sending others to another contact. So valuable. There's so many times where it's like people will reach out to me all the time, and it's like they want to find out more about my organization, my team's culture, things of that nature. I don't have an opening. I would love to get to know them, and they're on my radar now, but I may send them to somebody else who I trust on my team to have a conversation, get them on their radar too. And now I'm doing them a service by sending them to that other contact. And that's why it's critical to understand what that driving force, that desired outcome that they have is. The other thing, I think one of the reasons why a lot of times I try to say yes as much as I can is it's painful sometimes when people get the wrong impression. I've gotten people that have reached out to me, like, on LinkedIn, and my LinkedIn inbox is flooded. And I've had people that have said, like, hey, I really want to talk about a job, in your organization and this and that. And it's like, man, if I had the time to respond to every one of these things, I would. But I've gotten scathing notes from people that have been like, you didn't respond to me. You never said anything about this. You're a beep, beep, beep. And it's like, man, I wish I had gotten to this. And I don't want that perception to be out there, but I can only control so much. And that's why I think it's key to be true to you, be true to your core, the family, your values, live them as best you can. And I think that's the end all be all.
I mean, if you get a note like that, it's not who you want to mentor anyway, right? There's your quality. Hey, I have a question for Doug here as we kind of get close to wrapping up. I want to go back to your story part that you were talking about, right? Is providing a story or saying, giving an example. Could that be applied? And as you were mentioning that, I was thinking, and Brandon, love your take on this as you kind of continue to grow your team. People are coming to you, I'm sure, all the time with questions and problems, and I need this and I need that. Are you better served to, rather than trying to fix the problem or give them the answer, just tell them a story and let them try and, in other words, being the manager, be the mentor? Is that a best practice or something as business leaders we should be thinking about?
Yeah, for me, without a shadow of a doubt, it's something I shared earlier today, which is part of the parenting philosophy that my wife and I have for our two kids, and I think there's a meaningful correlation between that and a potential leadership philosophy, which is we never do anything for our kids that they can do for themselves. And I gave an example of my son telling me his water bottle was empty as we were standing in the kitchen beside the refrigerator that has water readily available. And I said, like, buddy,
Let me tell you a
stinks,
story
man.
when my water bottle was empty.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, buddy, that must be terrible. You must be really thirsty. If you don't have any water, what are you gonna do? Do you know where the water is? And like, yeah, okay, so go get it. And then so he goes to open his water bottle, but his water bottle, he wasn't strong enough to get it open. It was kind of stuck. And so he handed it to me. I opened it, but I didn't put any water in it. I opened the water bottle and then I handed it back to him. right? So one of the questions, kind of Brandon, to your earlier point, that I ask, in addition to what are the intended outcomes, is what have you already tried? What have you done? Right. And this idea kind of came to me. I was listening to Seth Godin. This was a long time ago. And he mentioned that there was someone that reached out to him to ask him questions about writing, for them writing their book. And what Seth Godin said is, come back when you've written 10,000 terrible pages and we can talk about how you can write good pages. Right. And that's really what I want to know. Right. I want to know that someone has made the attempt, that is thrashing, that's willing to try something, willing to fail. And when it comes to specifically my team, when I'm leading from an authority or a management position, then if I'm giving them the answers, that means I never get to go on vacation. And when I am on vacation, I'm worried to death. Right. And I think a real good indicator for an effective leader is what happens when they're on vacation. Does the whole thing fall apart? Or are you empowering people and playing a role of support? Or do you just have these people around you to support you doing the work, right? Are you doing the work of 2 or 5 or 7 or 12? Or are you empowering people to magnify and amplify the work by doing what they can do, and then coming in, and when they look, if they need their water bottle opened, I'll open it, but I'm not going to fill it up with water.
Yeah, I like that approach. I think that as we're in a growing business, hiring people, and this is something I learned a couple of companies ago. Is I wrote about it in my book. Is it was the visual for me, and I don't know if I can do this. Is this is as big as I can make my circle. And that's as big as my company's going to get as long as I have to be involved with everything. But if I just hold hands with one other person, my circle just got a lot bigger. And then you add 2 people and you 3 people. And visually, that for me was the reminder that if I solve their problems, they're going to keep expecting me to solve their problems. And so
Right.
we have in fact, you could probably talk to anyone that's worked for me ever. And if you say, what is one Brandonism that jumps to mind, it's usually this one. I see 2 types of people in the company. Very simple, black and white. There's those who put things on my plate and tell me that it needs to be done. And there's people who come and tell me there's something needs to be done and they have a solution and therefore they take things off my plate. Really, really simple. And I don't mean to sound like an authoritarian with it, but really, really simple. Which ones do you think I like to be around me? Which ones do you think are going to get promoted? Which ones do you think are going to get more responsibility? So and it's the same thing like with our kids. We have an expression in our house that, Zoe, who's 11, she's been saying since she was probably 4, which is be a problem solver. Somebody says something that sounds helpless or victimish, somebody in the family is going to go, be a problem solver. Like,
Yep.
just go solve it. And it reminds me of that expression, if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. The hardest part sometimes as leaders is to slow down enough to use every moment as an opportunity in the big picture to go faster, further. But it takes going slower now. We talk a lot about go slow to move fast. In sales and leadership's the same thing. Take a little bit of extra time with this person right now, because then they won't have to come back and ask you that again, or maybe they come back 1 or 2 times, but not 10 times.
That's right.
Well said.
So should we, Carson, I liked your suggestion in the private chat. Should we take Bob's?
Loved Bob's comment.
Yeah.
We could use that as kind of our closing round, the round robin.
You mean the gold nugget?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Did you see Bob's real quick? Bob's last comment. There are 2 types of people: those who put people into 2 types, and those who don't.
Clever.
Thanks, Bob.
all right, so Bob's challenge was, what is one golden nugget that you have received from a mentor? and his was your job as a manager to manage yourself out of a job. Who wants to go first?
I think Doug needs to go first.
All right, Doug goes first. That's what we
Put
do.
him on the hot seat.
Right.
Yeah, repeat the question for me. You broke up a little bit when you said it.
It is, what is one golden nugget you have received from a mentor? Like one golden nugget, piece of, I won't say advice because I know we don't want to use that word, but guidance maybe is the right word, that was kind of a life-changing golden nugget.
The first one that comes to mind is one of the first that happened in my career. So there was a vice president of a company that I was working for that I just wanted to be. I wanted to be him, right? He was in the position that I wanted. He had all of this like credibility and respect across the business. Like he was like the picture of who I wanted to become. And so
Did we
morning before everything starts, and he looks at me and he goes, "How much is a cup of coffee?" And I said, $3 or $4. And he goes, "How much do you think an hour of my time is worth?" And I went, "Oh, I have asked the wrong question, you know?" And so he goes, "Look, never mind. Meet me in the morning, 6:45 downstairs at the coffee shop." So I get down there. I'm like fear and trembling because I have no idea. I think this guy's about to just eat me alive, you know? And so he sits down and he goes, "What do you want to know?" And I was like, I aspire to be like you in a lot of ways. Your role, the respect you get, and kind of name some other stuff. And I said, what advice would you give? This is before I knew to ask for a story. And to me, this was some of the most useful advice. Is he said, make sure that you are always aware of who hates you. He said, because we get preoccupied with the people that like us, but sometimes people like us because they like us. Sometimes they like us because it's convenient. Sometimes they like us because they want something from us. But the people that dislike you for their own reason. And the consistency for people that don't like you, it should be that the people that don't care for you should be the people that lack the integrity, that lack character, that maybe don't tell the truth, that want to cut corners, that want to do path of least resistance. And so if you're paying attention who doesn't like you, and there's consistency across what type of person that is, then it'll make it more clear for why other people decide to like you. So people with high values, high integrity, high ambition, there should be synergy. But when that group starts to not like you, then maybe it's because you're cutting corners, right? And I thought that was such a brilliant way to think about the people in our realm of influence is being clear, because not everyone will always like us, and there will be plenty of people that don't like us for reasons that maybe it's because we make them uncomfortable because we're outworking them. Maybe we make them uncomfortable because we're outperforming them, because we're putting in the time, because we're actually let's say dedicated to our families, or we're dedicated to our work, or whatever it is. And having that clearly for me has been one of the most important, I guess, pieces of advice or nuggets that I've received.
Wow.
Love
That's
that.
good.
Love that.
All right, Brandon, you want to go next?
Yeah, so Derek Wong has been my mentor for 25 years now. And he was a business owner, and so he's been in my life across entrepreneurship and being a husband, being a father. One of the things that he gave me that just life transformational for me. I was such a crappy husband when we first got married. I had no idea. My wife's feelings were true, whether I agreed with it or not.
Mm,
Were you guys hearing that
love that.
echo? Were you guys hearing Brandon echo? No. I'm hearing
Hate your echo. Hate your echo. Okay. I would recommend everybody mute.
Right. Are we echoing now? No. All right. We'll mute and then we'll go to the next one. I'll give you mine, and then Carson, you can wrap us up. So
Yeah.
I had a golf coach in high school, and when I started on the golf team there, I was really expecting the coach to really like coach me on my game, right? Show me how to hit a better drive or do all of things. And the advice that I got from, it was actually her who was as a golf coach. She said, I'm not going to coach you at all, right? But I'm going to make you accountable to work hard. And that's all that's all she really did, is made us accountable to work hard. And what I found is I wanted to work hard in order to please her and to please the result of achieving that accountability. And it's something that I've taken with me my whole life, is when I get in a situation is like, sometimes you want help or coaching or whatever, but also looking at, am I working hard enough in whatever it is to even be accountable to that person if I was, and I think that ties into everything Carson and Brandon, you were saying earlier, but it's something I've remembered for, 10 years since I've been out of high school.
Beautiful.
10 years.
Beautiful. I'm going to make an ask.
I heard that.
Yeah.
I'm going to make an ask. I'd love if all of our listeners put in the comments your best nugget from a mentor. I think that'd be super valuable.
Yeah, we got one from BJ here. Mediocre people don't like high achievers, and high achievers don't like mediocre people.
It's a great one. So I'm going to riff my top 4 because these are all equally important. Kind of like Tim Grover does in his books. If you've never read them, you need to. Relentless and Unstoppable, and Winning. So basically, everything is ranked number 1 because there's no such thing as one over the other. He's got these rules, and he throws caution to the wind. He picks 13 top things that are like the facets of winning. So I'm going to make number one. But number 1 is your network is your net worth. So valuable. I lost my job years ago. I had no network. I thought I could just parlay my skills into something paying the same thing. I was dead wrong. I didn't know people, and I needed to invest in real relationships. Number 2, control what you can control. You've got to go in and survey the scene, understand the playing field and the parameters. What you can control, you got to control it. If you don't, you're going to have a blind spot, and it will bite you. Number 1, become the obvious choice for what you want. Assume the position. If you want to go out and do something, go out and do it. I loved what Brandon said about solving problems, being a problem eliminator. That's what I've always tried to do. If I want to go out and be a manager or a director or a VP, I'm going out and I'm serving in those types of roles and bringing people together and building community and getting experiences that are going to be valuable. And the last one is win the crowd. I realized a long time ago, I was very opinionated, and I would have a very dominant personality in certain situations. And I've had people say, like, look, man, you got to build consensus. You got to win the crowd, like they say in Gladiator. Give them something that they will never forget. And giving people an experience, whether it's a customer, whether it's colleagues, whether it's other people that you work with or touch or whatever it is, give them an experience, make them feel included, win the crowd, win them over, and you'll be unstoppable.
Wow. All right, Doug, we're going to let you get back on the road. Thank you for, I think we could talk all afternoon.
Yeah, it was such an honor to be with the 3 of you. Thank you so much for the time and the space. Excited for the next conversation.
Heck yeah.
Thanks, Doug. Drive safe.
All right, I sure will. Thanks, everyone.
Carson, wrap us up. We'll echo our way out of here.
Thanks, everybody, for being on. And until next time, happy modern selling.
All right. Thanks.